So last video we reviewed the patterns that happen in different crosses of Mendelian genetics, specifically the monohybrid crosses, which is what you need to do any kind of problems, including the dihybrid crosses. Because remember, dihybrid crosses, because of independent assortment, are basically many monohybrid crosses put together. So you can just use genetic probability with the end, which means multiplying the probability of each cross to actually solve those problems. So you do not need to think of them as dihybrid crosses at all. So everything is a monohybrid cross in Mendelian genetics. All right, so you need to know the patterns of these monohybrid crosses. You need to memorize things like, for example, when I say everybody is the same, you should think of the true breeding cross. When I say parents are making something that looks 100% hybrid, and everybody looks the same, that should make you think of the P cross. When I say something like 3-to-1 phenotypical ratio or 1-to-1 genotype ratio, you think of the F1 cross of the dominant type, because if you have the complete dominance type, because if you have the incomplete dominance, the phenotype ratio is 1-to-1. Same thing for codominance. When you hear something like 50-50 ratio, that makes you think of an F2 cross. When you think, all right, so you should be able to identify these patterns. When you talk about two different true breeders breeding, that's the P cross. If they say two of the same true breeder breeding, that's a true breeding cross. If they say two hybrids breeding, that's an F1 cross. And if they say a hybrid breeding with a pure breeder, that's an F2 cross. So these key things, these key pointers, you need to be able to identify. So watch this video again and again until you get those things and identify those key pointers. But we're going to watch and see what the patterns are here that we're supposed to be talking about. Now, for starters, let's focus on the parents. So if the word problem tells you that the parents have the same genotype, look at the crosses. Which crosses have the parents with the same genotype? There will be both true breeding crosses, and the F1 cross would qualify for any kind of dominance. Remember that dominance relationships do not affect the genotype ratios, so that whatever I say for genotype ratios applies to all the dominance relationships. Okay, it only affects the phenotype ratios. Now, what if the word problem says this is a 100? Everybody, all the parents are homozygous recessive. This is a cross between true breeders. So this is a true breeding cross. The same thing for all the parents are homozygous dominant. What about if they say all the parents are heterozygous? They're talking about the F1 cross. So make sure you identify that. What if they say half the parents are homozygous dominant and half the parents are homozygous recessive? They're talking about the P cross. So you should be able to find that. What if they say that you get 50% homozygous dominant and 50% homozygous heterozygous? You should find that as the F2 cross, specifically the dominance F2 cross. And then if you talk about the homozygous recessive and the heterozygous, you're talking about the test cross, the F2 test cross. So you see how you can use the genotype, if that's given to you in the question, to quickly identify whatever they're talking about. All right? So what about the phenotype? What if they tell you that all the parents of this cross look the same? Well, which crosses would qualify? Well, dominant, this will all have, the parents will look the same. This parents will look the same. On this one, parents will look the same as well. And on this one, parents will look the same if it's complete dominance. If it's incomplete dominance or codominance, the parents will look different, because the hybrid will have a look that's either a hybrid look or a look that has both at the same time. Now, what if they say the parents look different? The only crosses where parents will look different will be the P cross, right? By definition, they look different, or the test cross for the F2 crosses, or the dominance cross if you're talking about incomplete dominance, or if you're talking about codominance. And that's what this chart is showing you there. Now, what if they say this cross, everybody has a hybrid look, all the parents? They're talking about the cross, F1 cross, but specifically on the incomplete dominance, if they all have a hybrid look. If they say all the parents look like both traits, they're talking about the F1 cross of the codominance type. What if they say half the parents look dominant, half the parents look recessive? Which one could that be? Well, that could be the P cross, because that by definition that's what happens in the P cross. But it could also be, right, the test cross if you're talking about complete dominance. Because if it's incomplete dominance or codominance, this will not look recessive. This will not look like dominant. This will look like a hybrid. All right? Or in a case of a codominant, it will look like both. All right? So that's what these things, the last three, are here. Now, so you see, you can identify which cross they're talking about by listening to what they're saying about the composition of the parents. So that's what you have to research. All right? Now, let's look at the offspring relationships and see if we can learn something from the offspring relationships as well. All right? So, if they say all the children have the same genotype, which cross they could possibly be talking about? That could be any of the true breeding crosses or the P cross. And it doesn't matter which dominance relationship you're talking about because we're talking about genotypes here. If they say all the children are homozygous recessive, the only cross possibly 100% homozygous recessive children is the true breeding cross for homozygous recessive. So that is the only cross that can do that, no matter what kind of dominance it is. All right? If they say the children all look different from each other. Well, this cross is certainly going to make a cross that has children that look different from each other. And also, on the test cross, they'll have children that look different from each other. And on the F2 dominance cross, if you're talking about incomplete dominance or codominance, the kids will have a different genotype. But we're talking about genotype, so it won't matter. All of these, all the F2 crosses and the F1 cross will have things that look different from each other. Now, what if you're talking about something that is pure homozygous dominant? The only cross that can possibly make all children homozygous dominant will be your true breeder cross, which is here, the homozygous dominant, right? Now, what about if they talk about a cross where the children have a 1-to-1 ratio of the genotype? They're obviously talking about the F1 cross. What if they're talking about a genotype ratio that is 50-50 dominant, 50% heterozygous? They're talking about the F2 dominance cross. And what if they talk about one that's the children are 50-50 homozygous recessive, 50-50 heterozygous? They're talking about the test cross for the F2 crosses. Now it gets complicated when you look at phenotypes of the children. So let's look at the phenotypes of the children and see if we can figure something out. Now, if they say all the children look the same, that's going to be any of the true breeding crosses or any of the P crosses or the F2 dominance cross if it's complete dominance. If it's incomplete dominance, their children are not going to look all the same because this is going to be a hybrid look and they're going to be looking different. What if they say the children all look different or the children look different from each other? That could be the F1 cross or the dominance cross in case of incomplete dominance or codominance, or the test cross. So that will be the different situations in which children will look different from each other. All right? Now what about all the children look dominant? Then it has to be the true breeding cross or the P cross if you're talking about complete dominance, right? Or the F2 cross if you're talking about complete dominance. All right? With incomplete dominance, that would not apply. Now, what about the recessive children? It looks recessive. The only cross that can do that is the recessive true breeding cross. All right? Now, all the children look like a hybrid look. All of the children look like a hybrid look. The only cross that can do that is the F1 cross if you're talking, the P cross if you're talking about incomplete dominance, because that's the hybrid look. What if they say all the children have both looks? That's going to be the F1 cross for the codominance relationship. What if they say 3 children look dominant and 1 to every child that looks recessive? They're talking about the F1 cross in a dominance relationship. What if they say that half the children look dominant, half the children look recessive? They are talking about the test cross. It has to be the test cross of complete dominance. All right? Because if this is incomplete dominance, you're going to have a hybrid look, like here. And if it's codominance, you're going to have a codominant look on the test cross. What if they say that 50% look recessive and 50% look hybrid? They're talking about the test cross on that as well. If they 50% look like both, they're talking about the test cross on codominance. And what if they say 25% look dominant, 50% look like the hybrid look, and 25% look recessive look? You're thinking 1-to-1 phenotype ratio. That has to be the F1 cross in case of incomplete dominance. What if they say the child's look 1-to-1, but the 2 is looking like both at the same time? That's the F1 cross for codominance. So you see how you can use the language of the question to try to decipher what are they asking you to do. All right? Now, what if they give you information about the relationship between the parents and the children? So if they say that all the parents have the same genotype ratio as their children, they must be talking about the dominant or the recessive true breeding cross, because that's 100% for both, or they're talking about the F2 crosses or the test crosses. And remember, for genotype ratios, it doesn't matter the dominance relationship. If they say that the children have different genotype ratios than the parent do, that could happen with the P cross or the F1 cross for any of them. If they are talking that you have two children that are like the parents, and then two children are unlike the parents, and each unlike each other, that's the definition of the what happens in the F1 cross, because you have two parents which are the same genotype, and you make two children which have the same genotype as the parents, and two children that have different genotypes which do not match each other. So that's what that's talking about, the F1 cross. If they say that all the parents, no one is like anyone else, which cross they're talking about? They're talking about the third cross again, which is the P cross. Because look at that. You have the parents, the children, and then the other parent, and then the children, and all of these are different. So the parents do not look alike, do not have the same genotypes, and the children do not have the same genotypes as the parents. So that's what they're talking about if they say all like neither. All the childs look like neither of the parents in terms of genotypes. Now, what if they say that all childs look like both parents? That means the childs are looking. See here, that's talking about this. All children here look like both parents at the same time because both parents look like the children. So that's a true breeding cross that they're talking about. And so you can identify the cross by the information they give you. Finally, the phenotype ratio. If they tell you that the kids look the same as the parents, which one are they? It could be a recessive, any of the true breeding crosses. It could be the dominance cross. If you're talking about complete dominance, they would look the same as each other. Another cross in which the children look different from the parents is the F1 cross, because parents look the same, but the children, some of them, altogether, they don't look like the parents, Now, any cross that says that 50% look like one parent and 50% look like the other is going to be an F2 cross, no matter the dominance relationship. If they say that 3 look like the parent and 1 looks unlike the parent, they're talking about here the F1 cross in the case of complete dominance, because these 3 will look like one parent and this will look like unlike the parents. If they say a cross where 1 is like the parent and 3 are unlike the parent, which cross is that? Sorry, if they say 2 are like the parents and 2 are unlike the parents, and those 2 which are unlike the parents are unlike each other, they're talking about the F1 cross in the case of incomplete or codominance. Now, if they say everybody is unlike the parent, the only way to do that would be cross 3, which is going to be the incomplete dominance, where the children have a look that neither of the parents has. It's a new look or the hybrid look. But if all look like one of the parents, then what you have is the normal F1 cross of complete dominance, where all look like one of the parents, because the children all look like the dominant parent. And if all look like both parents, in other words, they look like both parents at the same time, you have to be talking about a true breeding cross where the children look like both parents because both parents look like each other. Or like the P cross, where the children have the features of either of the parents. So there you have it. You can figure out everything from the word problems. And so on the last video, I'm going to show you a few word problems, and I'll work with you to see if you can figure out what cross they're talking about. I'll give you several features, and I'll tell you that. We'll see if you can do it.